here is Professor Joshua Cooper and Unton Chantalabom Wiese. I will show you a picture. Yeah, we can see them there. Here for Alliance for Democracy in Laos. Hello, Joshua. And hello, Bunton.
Hello, greeting from Glasgow, Scotland. Ladies and gentlemen, as a president of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos, I warmly greet you all. You are probably wondering why a human rights organization like ours is advocating these issues. Like the United Nations, we see that right to an intact environment as a fundamental human right. But we go one step further by saying that the entire spectrum of human rights goes hand in hand with climate protection and environmental protection. Our main concern is my home region, the Mekong region, along with the Amazon. And Central Africa, the Mekong region is one of the most important rainforest areas that influence the global climate. Unfortunately, we have to say that the region has developed to the detriment of the global climate. One of the most forest-rich countries in the Laos region is developed from a CO2 consumer to a CO2 producer over the past 25 years. What exactly is happening in this region will be explained later by my subsequent speaker. On the last climate summit, governments have repeatedly announced that they want to save the world climate. However, we see there are some countries that ignore climate protection and only outsource the problem instead of doing something for climate protection. China is doing particularly badly in the Mekong region. All over the world, China is trying to control poor countries by the prospect of wanting to help the country and to act for the development of the countries. China is into only exploiting their countries and colonizing them in a modern way. Since people in China do not have a say, and this also applies to the countries that China tried to control. Just a minute, please. China is promoting its own deterrent system on top of other countries. This happens in West Africa as well as in Southeast Asia, where Laos is particularly affected by this policy. The Chinese now have more rights in Laos than there are people. All civil rights have now been withdrawn from the people of Laos. By law, any criticism of the government, state institution, or any grievance in the country is criminal offense and is sanctioned. High prison term and an additional fine. Thanks to restricting internet control with Chinese support, bloggers are also severely punished on social media. The sentences of free bloggers to prison term to up to 20 years caused a sentence in 2017. Other environmental activists have been murdered or have disappeared. The member countries of the United Nations want the poor country with 100,000 billion US dollars to sponsor. Their intentions are quite honorable, but unfortunately, to keep fighting that a large part of this money sinks into corruption swamp of many dictatorships. Here too, Laos is in South Asia has a negative top position in the corruption index of Transparency International. The country traditional ranks between 133 and 139 place. Too much money goes to corrupt dictatorship instead of publicly controlled NGOs. We therefore recommend first, the aid fund that falls from the United Nations for climate protection must be more strictly controlled. Violation and abuse must be severely censored. Second, cheap products that are responsible for exploiting people and damaging the climate must be banned. Countries that violate this requirement can be punished with protective tariffs. First, more money for independent NGOs than for dictatorial government. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, this is a great venue. It was Dr. Bunton's statement on the environment protection. I'll show you some pictures here on the wonderful event here.
It's the Fridays for the Future March. So this is what began in 2018 when Greta Thunberg decided that enough is enough, so she had won an essay a little bit earlier. Then on August 18th, she decided to sit by herself and strike in front of the Swedish Parliament. And this, what you see here, is the global movement of youth coming together to say, why should we study if we won't have a world to live in? So it's exciting to see the youth stand up and demand a future that respects human rights, that really looks at taking care of the earth. You can see the signs there really coming up even with the new terminology. People know about genocide from World War II, but the concept of ecocide is a campaign that's headed up here in Scotland as well as in the UK. And so it's exciting to see everything that's going on today. But what matters most is if all of the peaceful protests and all of the direct action, you also see a lot of X's. That's Extinction Rebellion. So that's a movement that's using direct action. So what we see here at COP26, this is a direct action. And we hope this direct action creates enough pressure so that the diplomacy works for the countries that are trying to hold out and not live up to their obligations. Because you can see we're all in this together, and everyone's realizing if we don't, it will end. So we see indigenous people there standing up. We see koalas over here. The main thing we're saying is don't top out at COP26. What is absolutely essential is we got to end the financial fairy tales of infinite growth and demand that we live a holistic life that focuses on regenerative economy and focuses on returning rights to all indigenous people. Thank you.
You don't need to look at me.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, folks, maybe we will be back in a few minutes. Last pictures here, Bunton with ADL sign together with Fridays for Futures Kids here. So great, so
สบายดี
wonderful.
พ่อแม่พี่น้องลาวอีกครั้งหนึ่งบ้านท้ายของการเดินขบวนประท้วงอยู่ที่นครหลวงกลาสโกวประเทศสกอตแลนด์มื้อนี้วันที่ 5 เดือนพฤษภาคม 2021พวกข้าพเจ้าคณะองค์การพัฒนาประชาธิปไตยในลาวท่านมาคูซิเซอร์ท่านเจสซิเปอร์ข้าพเจ้าเองที่เดินทางเข้าร่วมกองประชุมปัญหาโลกร้อนอยู่นครหลวงในนี้มื้อนี้มีการเดินขบวนประท้วงอันใหญ่ของประชาชนจากทั่วโลกที่มาเคลื่อนไหวต่อสู้เพื่อปกป้องบ่ให้โลกเหล่านี้ฮ้อนต่อไปอีกในโอกาสของประชุมปัญหาโลกร้อนนี้ก็มีผู้นำระดับทั่วโลกหลายประเทศในนั้นก็ประธานาธิบดีโจไบเดนและผู้นำผู้สำคัญประเทศอื่นๆก็มาร่วมในนั้นและพวกเราในนามองค์การพัฒนาเพื่อประชาธิปไตยในลาวที่ได้มาย่อป้ายขึ้นในสถานที่นี้พวกเรามาแห่งนี้ก็ย้อนว่าอยู่ในประเทศลาวมีการทำลายธรรมชาติด้วยการตัดไม้ทำลายป่าอย่างใหญ่หลวงซึ่งว่าในนั้นก็แม่นมีปัญหาที่ว่าเวียดนามมาครอบครองลาวมีการตัดไม้ของลาวไปเวียดนามแล้วก็อ้างว่าเป็นผลผลิตของเวียดนามปัญหาเวียดนามครอบครองลาวยังบ่พอปัญหาจีนมาครอบครองลาวอีกจีนเข้ามาครอบครองลาวไม่สร้างเขื่อนอย่างบ่มีขอบเขตการยึดที่ดินของประชาชนการสร้างรถไฟความไวสูงก็เป็นการตัดไม้ทำลายป่าและการสร้างเขื่อนที่บ่มีขอบเขตทางภาคเหนือโนอาณาเขตแม่น้ำของจีนก็สร้างมาหลายแล้วอยู่ลาวเขตแม่น้ำของก็สร้างขึ้นมาอย่างบ่มีขอบเขตซึ่งเป็นการทำลายธรรมชาติอยู่ในลาวพวกเราจึงมาเคลื่อนไหวในกองประชุมปัญหาโลกร้อนนี้มื้อนี้ก็ได้มีการจัดที่เอิ้นว่ากองประชุมท้ายที่แว่นของพันธมิตรของเรา2ครั้งเพื่อรายงานให้โลกทราบว่ามีหยังเกิดขึ้นอยู่ในประเทศเราประชาชนลาวถูกเหยียบย่ำย้อนการทำลายธรรมชาติตัดไม้ทำลายป่าและสร้างเขื่อนอย่างบ่มีขอบเขตแม้นมาจากปัญหาเวียดนามและจีนที่มารุกรานลาวมาครอบครองของเรามาทำสร้างความเสียหายแก่ธรรมชาติเรามาเหยียบย่ำสิทธิของประชาชนเราพวกเราเมื่อนี้จึงได้มาเดินร่วมเคลื่อนไหวประท้วงนำสาวโลกเมื่อนี้ก็มีจำนวนคนเข้าร่วมเต็มเมืองนี่เลยเนาะที่ว่าเจ้าประท้วงเมื่อนี้อย่างคึกคืนพวกท่านจะได้ฟังอยู่ในเวทีแห่งนี้พวกท่านจะเห็นสถานที่เราจะเป็นเข้าใจ
Aloha, Sabadi. We are here at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Conference of Party COP26, otherwise known as Glasgow COP26. It's a very important session of civil society as well as people all coming together from around the globe to demand a new direction that's linking liberation of all people's movements, democracy, and climate justice. Today, we're looking at the important issue and the linking of the future of Laos with the global climate crisis. We know as we're here in COP, this is the last best hope and chance for humanity to avoid and avert climate catastrophe that's beyond repair. What we're looking at today, though, is showing what we can do inside Laos to then contribute to the global action taking place by indigenous peoples, by earth rights defenders, and by those that care about the future of our planet, as well as all people. Today, as they're gathered in COP, we're here on the final day of the first week. And this week has been quite a week. We've seen President Joe Biden showing that America is back on the global stage, also with a commitment to make sure that we achieve the Paris Agreement. We also see one of the most important issues is still striving for 1.5 to stay alive, to make sure that we don't hit tipping points that will have huge impacts on vulnerable communities such as the country of Laos. There's also the important aspect of the flowing of finance to make sure that 100 billion is secured. Now, we'd be very pleased with that, but we also know that cannot happen if dictators and authoritarian regimes don't have accountability when they receive these funds. So we know that for Laos to contribute and be part of the human family, there must be an earth democracy, as Vandana Shiva has discussed, and make sure that the people of Laos can stand up. We also know that Laos can contribute. Sombat Sompong, as we're just a month away from another commemoration of his disappearance, was actually doing exactly what the Paris Agreement calls for. So we know the Lao people have the traditional knowledge to make sure that the world can survive this climate catastrophe and that Laos can be part of the human family coming together for a better world. I'm joined today by two amazing activists who dedicate their lives to make sure that human rights, democracy, justice for all is actually achieved using the human rights framework, but also the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'll first hand it to the President of Alliance for Democracy in Laos, Bunton. Thank you so much, and welcome to Glasgow.
Thank you, Joshua. Welcome to Glasgow. Ladies and gentlemen, today I would like to talk about human rights and environment in my country of birth, about Laos. Ladies and gentlemen, we, the Alliance for Democracy in Laos, see that human rights and climate protection are inextricably linked. In this lecture, we want to point out that it makes no sense to reduce carbon dioxide emission only in the industrialized country, while in the poorer, mostly dictatorial countries, environmental protection is neglected. For this reason, I would like to briefly explain what the human rights situation is like in Laos so that one can better understand the environmental problems. Vietnam control in Laos. Since the takeover of the power by the Lao Communist Party 1975 in violation of the peace agreement of 1973, Laos fell under a dictatorial one-party communism and has remained so to the present, and despite the opening of the economy and political oppression. And the harsh trampling on the human rights of the people are ongoing. So there is no political freedom in Laos. There is still an authoritarianism in Laos. There are also no free elections. As early as 1973, the government of Laos and Vietnam signed a union agreement which has guaranteed Vietnam's dominance over Laos to this day. This agreement provides the basis of several environmental crimes that are committed across the region. China influence in Laos. The government of the Lao PDR has made concession of land to China under soft leasing, with term to as long as 99 years in many provinces in the country, where the example in the area of the Golden Triangle under the use of a special economic zone. China built Chinatown and casino to be populated by hundreds of thousands of Chinese without Lao people having any right to object. This is a new kind of colonialism. In recent years, the influence of China in Laos has become increasingly larger. Laos today. The problems in Laos are extremely complex, starting with human trafficking and enforced disappearance of human rights activists, land grabbing, corruption, and environmental destruction promoted by the state and authorities. There is a lack of basis of human rights in Laos. In every democratic country, the citizens have the right to complain about the condition in their country. In Laos too, the right to lodge a complaint is guaranteed, but unfortunately, the right is reversed by law and regulation. It is almost impossible for environmental activists to be active in Laos. Freedom of expression. On truth, the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, freedom of the media, freedom of assembly, and freedom of association in Article 44. This not exist in reality. Many laws and decrees do away with the right guaranteed in the Constitution. There are also major differences in the work of Parliament and the implementation of law by the government. The population is hindered in the exercise of their human rights. Every critic now is a discreditation of the system. So, dissidents are sentenced up to 20 years in prison. The citizens of Laos barely dare to stand up of their right. As the reason of rule of law in the country is in danger. Decree number 218 prevent the work of NGO in Laos. The government of Laos claims the more NGO work today than ever before. But the fact is that neither human rights organization nor political NGO are followed in Laos. Both regime critics are treated like criminals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bunton. And you brought up many points that is actually being discussed at the Blue Zone by many of the governments, because these are the most important points. You cannot have and achieve the Paris Agreement if the people don't have basic freedoms, and that was brought up in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That's why SDG 16 is so valuable. The other point that you brought up is really about expression and participation. The people of Laos are very dedicated to protect their homeland, very much care about the future of the country. But then the sad part is, larger countries in the region who also are not participating in COP this time, who have not even sent a head of state. Over 120 heads of state are here in Glasgow. But of course, China and Russia are not participating in that way. So this is the problem. We really do see, and we see it next month on Human Rights Day, that we must have a World Assembly of Democracies coming together who also are making sure that we can protect our planet. And the governments know sometimes they don't do enough. So the people, we the people, as in the UN Charter, are the caretakers of our countries and demand that our politicians, who might not be thinking long-term enough, actually take care of our places that we consider sacred. And the last point you brought up, where you shared about people who just ask the government to do the right thing that's even in the Constitution, are then jailed. And that's why I believe there's two documents. The Escazú agreement in Latin America is a new regional model. So ASEAN must look at coming up with a regional that guarantees the right to freedom of expression, public participation, and the right to defend one's sacred community spaces, and also have nature-based solutions to climate instead of these more colonial constructions that you shared with us that's being forced on Laos by Vietnam and China. So thank you very much, and we hopefully can then look at other aspects that we have to concentrate on so that we can see what's possible. Marcus, could you please share with us the massive environmental destructions in Laos and its core causes?
Oh yes, I want to speak a little bit more. Hello ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Bieso, I'm the Office Manager of the Alliance for Democracy's headquarters in Germany, and I'm specialized on environment, politics, economy and historical classes. At first I want to speak about the timber destruction and the wood destruction in Laos, and I will talk to you what we can do in the rich countries to solve these problems and to help the people in Laos much more than only showing the problems. In the past years, various independent NGOs has made some investigations with hidden cameras and as well as a fake businessman went into Laos and made some business, and I will show us at first a short summary of the EAR, Environment Investigation Agency from the UK.
This huge pile of logs is awaiting transportation to neighboring Vietnam via the border crossing an hour's drive away. The timber is owned by a Vietnamese military company and will be taken across the border in violation of Laos' log export ban. A new report by the Environmental Investigation Agency exposes how powerful interest groups are smuggling hundreds of thousands of cubic meters of logs across the Lao-Vietnam border every year to feed Vietnam's booming wood industry. This illegal log trade threatens some of the last intact forests in the Mekong region.
Investigation, but we have some more investigations. Another NGO we work with together is an NGO named Global Witness, and here we can see the relations to Europe.
And has been leased out to companies across the two countries, pushing hundreds of thousands of people deeper into poverty. Officials. And they've done it all with the backing of major Western banks and financial institutions. In Cambodia and Laos, both companies' activities have had a devastating impact on the surrounding landscape and indigenous communities. Satellite imagery proves that both VRG and Hagel member companies have been illegally clearing large areas of intact forest.
คนเมื่อเวียดโอ้ยบ่ฮอดเป็นหาเที่ยวคันรถก็เป็นมีมือหนึ่งคันเพิ่นย่ามเพิ่นเอาไปก็แม่นโอ้ยกลางคืนก็เอาไปกลางเว้นก็เอาไปดอกเพิ่นนี่ย้ายก็យើងវាបាត់បង់អស់บ่ได้ชดเชยบางตอนเพราะว่าแม่นให้หน้าปลาต้มแล้วแม่นมีแต่เพิ่นว่าแม่นแต่ของอันนั้นรัฐบาลตกลงให้บริษัทหมดเดี๋ยวนี้แม่นบริษัทแม่นต้องดุดบ่ให้ปลาชนเฮ็ดหน้าក្នុងពេលនេះគ្មានម្នាក់សោះបាទគេយកកម្មករពីក្រមមកធ្វើ
And the companies have dealt harshly with communities surrounding their plantations.
มันนี่อยู่นี่มีเฮือนห่านนั่นเด้ให้บ่จักให้บ่จักอีหยังเครื่องจักเครื่องลานนี่มันอยู่นี่หมดเฮือน3หลังตัวนี้พอดีไม่หมดบ่จักเช่าเฮือนบ่จักไผอันนั้นรถเครื่องใช้ไม้ชอยมันก็หมดของกินของยากมันบ่มีล่ะเดี๋ยวนี้หาหน่อไม้หน่อตอกเก็บผักกะหักหน่อนี่มันบ่มีเลย
Witness investigations have unearthed an intricate web of subsidiary companies and hidden relationships with corrupt officials that appear to have enabled Hegel and VRG to bypass social and environmental regulations.
បើសិនណាខាងអ្នកភូមិនឹងទៅខាត់ទៅចាប់គេមិនខ្លាចទេព្រោះវាមានអ្នកដែលគ្រប់គ្រងហើយបាទខាងផ្នែកលើគេគ្រប់គ្រង
But it's not just Southeast Asian companies involved. Financial support and a veneer of legitimacy have come from Deutsche Bank, which has multi-million-dollar investments in both VRG and Hegel.
And if you don't believe, the next one is filmed by a hidden camera by some environment activists made in Laos and Vietnam.
Explain the dynamics of this illicit trade in logs.
Laos is people is nice, you know, like, but the way the business is like Vietnam, you know, a lot of undertale money.
Yep, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
to secure the log.
Yeah, but very difficult to take the log out because it's illegal. So
It's illegal?
No, log. If you ship log from Laos out, it's illegal at the moment. We need to ship finished product.
Right, okay.
There is many ways to have the log, but I don't know.
Okay, we go there, we'll find out. Like,
yeah, because we are a big company, we don't know how to do that one, and we dare to do that one.
And its business arm, COE-CCO. Posing as log buyers.
So you only do 100% Lao wood?
Yeah, 100%. We cut down from the Lao and transport to the Vinh and Vietnam. Last year, we mainly sell in domestic for all company in Vietnam, and they buy from us and then they process, and then they make furniture and export to European. Last year 110,000 cubic meter last year.
Wood ourselves, we have to pay money for the government to have a quota of wood, and gives the money to transport wood here.
Oh, they transport?
No, we give those, for example, for the custom officer and forest manipulator. Yeah, we have to give some money. Now they are forbidding to import raw log and square log, but some company like us can import. Our uncle host said nothing is difficult if you have money.
To go export to Europe, America, or Laos.
ส่งไปเวียดนามเนาะคือใกล้กว่าเนาะ
A lot of wood, but right now I don't know why.
Why? Where did all your wood come from before then?
Huh?
Where did all your wood come from before?
Within Laos.
Oh, within Laos.
Yeah, right. Majority of the Lao company here, majority of the sellers in Vietnam.
They sell to Vietnam.
Vietnam actually, is buying logs and saw timber. We can ship it out. But logs, saw timber, we cannot send to Thailand, sure, because it's strict regulation. But in Vietnam,
just across it,
even illegal. This is only between us now. A lot of our coming from the government, the quota we have. So timber and logs go to Vietnam.
Right, really?
Instead of going to the factory. If I'm the boss, I can sell this wood, okay, at this price, and then they don't. Vietnam doesn't worry about the quality. Whatever quality they will take, and then they pay cash before they can see the goods. That's why it goes the business here. most of the Vietnamese, they're competing for any factory here. They bring you the cash, even if they don't see the goods yet.
Cash up front.
Cash. Like that. Vietnam really needs the wood. My boss, Mr. Bonsak, he's involved in the wooden business, logging, construction. He have coal mining too.
Oh.
All.
Rich man, yeah.
He's very clever. You see, all the one with the government make contracts and a lot of corruption. He's into that business. You see?
Who is Mr. Ponsak? I mean,
he's the main owner of this company. Yeah. He's very close to the government, the president.
Okay.
So sometimes government officials come to visit our factory.
Okay. So this processing factory is almost like a front.
You got it. If you have a big factory, the government will visit. Oh, you have a lot. Then we'll give you a lot of quota.
Yeah. We'll see a lot of the operation.
We give you a lot of quota. Now I get all the wood.
And that it was the key word. Nothing is impossible if you have money. They spent money. They taught it at this video to corrupt officials and to the government, to steal the wood from Laos and declare it in Europe as a product from Vietnam. And one more fact you have to know. As the Communist Party has come into power in 1975, more than 70% of the landscape in Laos was covered with wood. Now, in the year 2021, it's only 37%. That's the newest number I got a few days ago. So, and here you see it's still going on. It's still going on. People from Laos have sent me this video last year. Massive lug transportations to Vietnam, one after the other. This video will go about 5 minutes. And it will, you don't see an end of the truck lane here. It is so awful, it is so cool. But it's only one problem in Laos. We have another one. Ladies and gentlemen, the next problem is that is in dependence with the Asian community. The adventure group that wants to solve their problems across borders. So also the problem of energy supply. Sustainable energy supply, which is also CO2 neutral, is one of the major goals of the Asian countries as well as the United Nations goal of the SDGs. So the Mekong River has become into focus. The Mekong is the lifeline for over 56 million people in the region, with the source in China, and it goes through the countries Burma, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and most recently to Vietnam. But instead of protecting the Mekong as a lifeline, some countries in the region have certainly damaged the lifeline in the recent years. The most controversial dam projects of the recent years are dams in Laos. Laos is, with its many dams along the Mekong, one of the largest electricity producers in Asia. Nevertheless, a large part of the population is without electricity. According to official information, this affects about 25% of the population. Development workers and independent NGOs accept at least more than 30%. This is all the more surprising given that Laos claims to produce 1.9 gigawatt hours with its hydroelectric power plants. And there's a lot. 160 dams in the Mekong are planned. China has already built 10 and planned 1.9 gigawatt hours with its hydroelectric power plants. And there's a lot. 160 dams in the Mekong are planned. China has already built 10 and planned 11 more. In Laos itself, there are currently 86 dams. By the next years, a total of more 100 dams to be completed, most of these dam projects located in the tributaries, 11 of which are planned directly in the Mekong. 4 are under construction. The 4th has already signed the contract. Electricity accounts for about 2/3 of the country's exports. Laos has neither the technical expertise nor the resources to build the dams. Instead, only 10 dams have a direct partnership with Laos. All other dams are owned by foreign investors. In the past 2 years, 2 dams in Laos have already broken. And the dams in the Mekong River region are seen a threat to a diversity of animals and plants. The Mekong as a cohesive ecosystem that not only supplies fish to millions of people, but also supplies the South Vietnamese Mekong Delta, known as the rice chamber of Southeast Asia, with water and fertile sediments. The dams split up this ecosystem. Studies show that the fish stock will decline by up to 40% if all the dams on the Mekong River are complete at that plant. This is about the food security of the densely population. There are also other follow-up problems, such as forced resettlement, wasting money through corruption. The government of Laos ignores all protests against the dams from abroad. Even the protest by the UNESCO against the dam project in the Luang Prabang, it was ignored. Viciously, the rulers in Laos does not care about the prevention of the world cultural heritage of this city. On July 23, 2018, there was a repeated dam failure in the province of Etapao, in the south of Laos. During the night of July 32, 2018, the unfinished dam of the US $1 billion CPM non-hydropower project collapsed after heavy rains. Officially, there are only 39 people dead, but it's doubted by the population. The misfortune, but therefore persistent in our view,
goal is to actually protect the environment, not just for its own citizens, but for the people of the planet. And unfortunately, Laos is headed in the wrong direction. When it doesn't have a democracy and the dictator controls, then the people can't protect the land which they find so valuable. So this is some of the points that she raised. I also think one of the other important points was the land grabbing. The land grabbing then takes away people from the land who are actually doing nature-based solutions to take care of the planet. But then, instead of being able to take care of the planet, they're being tortured and taken into custody. So all of these examples shared by Bunton as well as Marcus shows that here, when the world comes together at the conference of parties, it's important to look at the large issues. But we also have to think of every country, of the 193 that exist in the UN, because if countries such as Laos, which can be seen as the heart of Southeast Asia, is not part of the solution, then it's one more opportunity that we're losing where we might reach a tipping point. So we must strive to make sure that the leaders of Laos hear the people, but more importantly, recognize the indigenous wisdom. As I mentioned earlier with Sombath Somphone, he was actually working toward the Paris Agreement before it was created. He was actually working towards the 17 global goals. So there are people from Laos who already have nature-based solutions that then actually contribute to those specific articles of the Paris Agreement. What is happening this week is nationally determined contributions, NDCs. And when Laos submits their NDC, based on the information shared by both of you, it's headed in the wrong direction rapidly, which then, of course, only contributes to the larger climate catastrophe. So we hope by sharing this information with the world that people can think, when they think about the forest, it's not only Papua New Guinea, it's also Laos. When we think about models of nature-based solutions and how indigenous peoples are coming together, we look at that with what's going on with people being arrested in Cambodia, but the situation is quite similar here in Laos. And of course, the point you raised so much, the Mekong, there's so many river advocacy actions taking place, because these rivers are really the veins of our Mother Earth. And you then have, let's say, the people in the Mekong Delta. Because of these dams, as you pointed out, that will then impact fish stocks. And fish stocks is also one of the big aspects as we're looking at nutrition for all people. So by your presentations, you showed that one, self-determination is the most important issue, those human rights. Number two, that the right to clean water is actually being impacted, because as the forest goes, then you actually lose new, clean, fresh water. The forest, we all know, attracts the rain. And then, of course, the food is being destroyed with the flooding of the dams, but also construction that then corrodes the Mekong that flows naturally. And then, of course, that last aspect of really housing and livelihood, all those economic, social, and cultural rights are denied. And meanwhile, it all contributes to the Paris Agreement. So we must come together and continue. And I thank you both for your dedication. And it's great to be with you here at Glasgow. We know Alliance for Democracy in Laos was at one COP before when Fiji hosted, and it was held in Bonn. But this is the first time we're at really this important COP, where the most important element is nationally determined contribution. We must ask, what is Laos NDCs? And more importantly, what can we do together to make sure that we can decarbonize, but also decolonize for a future of freedom inside Laos? Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Gut. Video beenden.
Also wir haben Recommendations nicht.
Achso, Video Recommendations. Zeit ist um. Wenn du möchtest. Nein. Okay. Okay.
Ja, wir können das auch auf der anderen Platz. Aber bei anderen, ja. Und du kannst hier, wenn du möchtest, ganz schnell, du kannst das
lassen. Ja.
Darüber auch vor der Kamera.
Ich mache jetzt aus. Okay, wir machen aus, weil wir müssen noch zu dem anderen Platz.
And we will support you. And the day that climate campaigners say to workers, your fight for fair, sustainable jobs is our fight, and we will also support you. Because we are some of the activists from the front lines of the climate crisis. We have Jetna Kitchener from the Pacific Climate Warriors, all the way from the Pacific. Over multiple planes for over 18 hours. That's why I flew for the first time in 2 years since the pandemic began. I haven't left my islands for 2 years since our borders closed during the start of COVID, but I knew the only reason I'd leave is to make sure our message gets here. And my message is this: we as a people are not going anywhere. We survived 3 eras of colonialism. We survived over 60 nuclear weapons detonated in our islands during the U.S. nuclear weapons testing program. And let me tell you, we will survive climate change. We refuse to leave. We refuse to go anywhere, and our sovereignty is not up for debate. But we do need collective action. We need the biggest emitters to be held accountable. We need financing to implement the solutions. We're developing ourselves. We contribute 0.00005% of the pay the consequences? Yes, nothing. We're looking at extreme solutions to be able to remain in our islands, reclaiming land, elevating our land, and the preliminary cost will be tens of billions of dollars. And we can only adapt so far before there's irreversible loss and damage. And we need separate streams of financing for all of that. We need to keep pressure that COP26 doesn't allow offsets or endanger human rights or the rights of indigenous people. So to close, I'd like to say something about faith. Faith in change. Faith in our youth. Faith in the elders who laid the groundwork, the indigenous, global south, the Pacific and Caribbean islanders who are in there right now holding the line. Faith in this movement, in you all, in collective action. There's a Marshallese legend about a whale that was once taunting a tiny bird, deeming itself dominant, more powerful. That tiny bird gathered a storm.
My name is Dr. Bunton Chantalagong Lisa. I am the president of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos. We work very hard for democracy in our country. Laos is in Southeast Asian country. I come here in Glasgow and in this forum. I think the world needs a new law, a new international law to protect the environment. But even have big problems with dictatorial system like China. Russia support China. China make big economy influence in our country, in Laos, like Southeast Asia, like in South Africa. China make mega project in our country. They make land grabbing. They make deforestation. Too many dams in Mekong region. In my country, now 86 dam project in small country like Laos. In the few years, around 100 dam. This dam is not for green energy in our country, but this is only for corruption with dictatorship government in our country. China support dictatorship system in this world, like Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar too. We need a new law to protect this environment, like nobody, no country have to make land grab in other country. No country have right to take forestation, to make too many dams, to make any environment destruction in other country. Every country, every people need right to protest against deforestation, against too many dams. Thank you.
สบายดีบรรดาท่านผู้มีน้องเราทุกท่านอยู่ทางในและนอกประเทศเคารพและนับถือมื้อนี้วันที่7 เดือนพฤษภาคม 2561พวกข้าพเจ้าคณะของการพัฒนาเพื่อประชาธิปไตยในลาวพร้อมด้วยท่านเจสุคูเปอร์ได้พากันเข้ามาร่วมกองประชุมเรื่องปัญหาโลกร้อนมื้อนี้แม่นกองประชุมภาคประชาชนภาคธรรมิกที่ได้กล่าวถึงเรื่องการตัดไม้ทำลายป่าข้าพเจ้าก็ได้เข้าร่วมแล้วก็ในโอกาสของประชุมดังกล่าวก็ได้มีโอกาสยกปัญหาการตัดไม้ทำลายป่าของเรานี่ประกอบส่วนเพิ่มเติมในโอกาสการสนทนาภาคที่2พวกเขาก็ได้เข้าร่วมกองประชุมเรื่องค้นคว้าในการที่จะสร้างกฎหมายของโลกฉบับใหม่ขึ้นที่เบ้าถึงการปกครองธรรมชาติและกองประชุมดังกล่าวข้าพเจ้าเองก็ได้มีโอกาสยกเอาปัญหาที่ว่าการทำลายธรรมชาติอยู่ในลาวการสร้างเขื่อนที่บ่มีขอบเขตโดยเฉพาะก็แม่นว่าย้อนว่าอิทธิพลของจีนเข้ามาในลาวอย่างร้ายแรงในการยึดที่ดินการสร้างเขื่อนก็เป็นการทำลายธรรมชาติเป็นปัญหาซึ่งว่ามันมีความจำเป็นที่จะต้องมีกฎหมายใหม่ของโลกเพื่อปกป้องธรรมชาติบ่ให้ประเทศใดประเทศหนึ่งไปยึดที่ดินของประเทศอื่นหรือไปสร้างโครงการใหญ่ด้วยการร่วมมือกับรัฐบาลที่ซ่อโกงและทำลายธรรมชาติประเทศนั้นอันนี้แม่นข้าพเจ้าก็ได้เสนอต่อกองประชุมพ่อแม่พี่น้องเราปัญหาโลกร้อนปัจจุบันนี้เนาะมันก็โลกนี้ก็ร้อนขึ้นมาปัจจุบันอยู่ใน 1.0 องศาและทั้งโลกพากันเคลื่อนไหวเพื่อต่อสู้บ่ให้มันร้อนต่อไปอีกหากโลกมื้อนี้ อนขึ้นไปถึง 1.5 องศามันจะเกิดปัญหาภัยพิบัติอันง่ายเองซึ่งย้อนอย่างสั้นจึงมีการค้นคว้ากันอย่างจริงจังเพื่อแก้ไขปัญหาดังกล่าวขอบใจจะซื้อ
We are live.
Aloha, how's everyone today? We are here on our final morning. It's Sunday. Most people would be holidaying, but we have just finished the People's Summit. People's Summit was very important, looking at 2 different case studies. First one was looking at indigenous women in the Amazon, focusing on how they're protecting their forests. This is absolutely essential for women around the world to come together to make sure that the forest is protected and that there is no destruction in the pursuit of small profits for a minority people. The forest is the common area of all humanity, so that was quite an impressive first meeting. The second one was looking at ecocide, or rights of nature, and this is a growing trend that exists around the world, looking at Wanganui in New Zealand, looking at South America and Colombia. All of these countries, including India, have now begun to guarantee the rights of nature to make sure that the nature is protected from being destroyed. So that was the other event we were at. Yesterday, we were at the giant march and the rally for climate justice. We were discussing and explaining where we are so far at the end of week 1. So right now we're at intermission of a theater performance known as the Conference of Parties, but they refer to them as a Conference of Polluters. And what we're trying to do is focus on 2 things. At the beginning, when we began this campaign at the UN General Assembly 76th session, high-level general debate, we were roughly around 2.6 or 2.7 with the measurement of carbon that we would get to. Antonio Guterres, the secretary, rejected the new mechanism known as nationally determined contributions of each state that submitted theirs, and said it's not good enough for the globe, for the people. We must do better for our planet. So he gave them a redo, a rewrite. And just this week, it is now at 1.9. What is important about these nationally determined contributions is we must all organize in our countries, where we are, in Laos, to make sure that our country's nationally determined contribution is as low as possible. So that is one important angle of what we're working with the NDC's nationally determined contributions. I hope within the next 5 days, before I leave here next Sunday, we'll be able to guarantee it's closer to 1.75 and working towards that 1.5 to stay alive. Because if it's not 1.5, the people of the Pacific will perish. They'll be under the waves that have so far nourished them. And we must stand up together for all people so that everyone has a life of dignity and sustainability, but that's where we must really focus on solidarity together. The final area is the 100 billion contribution to get the finances flowing to make sure that those countries impacted by loss and damages are protected. I'll never forget yesterday, at the end of that giant long rally was a sign, L&D, loss and damages. And everyone passed the loss and damages sign on the way to go on the stage. We had a young woman from Uganda, we had indigenous peoples from around the world. But what matters, if there is 100 billion, is for those countries where there's dictatorships, where there's no transparency, that we make sure we can end corruption so that when there is funds available, it goes to the people. When we look at the situation such as Laos, and when you look at the rally yesterday, it was launched by indigenous. So if you look at the history of Laos, Tupi Lifong was an indigenous person who had that concept of nature, who actually passed laws to make sure that you couldn't use dynamite to blow up the fish and catch fish that way. He, of course, disappeared. You go forward and the tradition continues by this government. You have Sombat Sompon, who also practiced methodology using creative video to teach everyone how to farm and take care of the land. He also disappeared. So what's sad inside a dictatorship is those people standing up for Earth democracy, those people wanting the principles of the Escazú, as well as the Aarhus Convention, are the ones who are silenced by government. So before we give a lot of funds, we have to make sure there's mechanisms to guarantee the human rights of people standing up for the environment and
make sure that COP is a new place. So we're here in Glasgow, but what matters in Glasgow is what happens on the ground later in Vientiane and La Prabang and many of the communities, and that's why we're here. So here we are, this exciting place saying, how does COP inspire you? I think what inspires us is we're all here to make sure that everyone everywhere on Earth has these basic rights, and also that there's rights of nature for everyone. So thank you so much. It's been an exciting first week, and we look forward to continue sharing news with you of what's happening here at COP26 in Glasgow as we go forward for one more final week of negotiations for the planet